Lisa Bevere, best-selling author, international speaker, co-host of the Messenger television program, which broadcasts in more than 200 countries. She's the wife of John Bevere, the mother of 4 boys, 1 grandson, and a granddaughter almost here. And she is dangerous for God. Lisa, having read your book, Lioness Arising, I think that's what you want all of us to be.
Absolutely. I want women to realize what they were created to be. You know, God doesn't reveal himself as limitless to limit us. He wants us to just fill this earth with his capacity in and through us.
Now, here's a quote that just, well, I found this one of the most motivational books I have ever read. I was excited from page 1. You believe that the body of Christ is on the verge of a total body makeover and an invisible uprising.
Yes. Yeah, you know.
Now, this is not women's lib. I mean, I hear Helen Reddy in the background singing, I am woman, hear me roar, a number it's too big to ignore.
Yeah.
That represented a different movement.
That represented a lot of anger towards the men. And whenever you have anger, there's going to be judgment and there needs to be punishment and people need to pay. And I don't think that's what we're talking about. We're talking about women roaring with the men. We're talking about women coming up into their places of strength. You know, I love this quote. I kind of positioned the book with this quote by Matthew Arnold. He said, if ever there comes a time, and that means that there is a timing with God, if ever there comes a time when the women of the world come together purely and simply for the benefit of mankind, they will be a force such as this world has never known. And I just find it profound that he would speak to us. You know, he was writing in the 1800s and he said, I'm looking at my day and it can't happen in my day. It can't happen in my time. Women can't vote, they can't own land, they really don't have these privileges. But if ever there is a time when the women of the world have a voice and they come together purely and simply for the benefit of all, they will be a force such as this world has never known. And I believe that the women of this world have awakened in this moment. And I believe this is our time to be that force that the world has never known and really begin to reach out and see this world transform for the good of all.
Now, I know that we have not reached this potential, but have we both seen on a small scale? I think of women's conferences where I am blown away by the creative gifts of women, by the vision of women, and the way that they come together for missions, to reach out to needy parts of the world. It just stuns me. They raise thousands of dollars in a weekend with all these creative projects. And I see that and I say, wow, this is a microcosm, but there's so much more.
There is so much more. And you know, here's something so exciting. You know, God is so brilliant, and I love it when the world's brilliance begins to echo God's brilliance. They did this amazing study, poured millions of dollars into this UN study of how can we solve world poverty. And then the World Bank got involved with this, and they said the answer to world poverty is to empower the women, to give the women money. If we give the women money, then we're going to empower them.
They'll make it happen.
Exactly.
And in many third world countries, it is the women who do the work.
Exactly. And then they said, how can we change these other things? How can we stop terrorism? Oh, I know how to stop terrorism. We'll give the women a robust voice. If we give them a voice, then they'll be able to raise children that won't be terrorists. They'll want their children to live. They'll want to see a different future. I had a really interesting phone call recently. It wasn't something I was able to write in the book. And, when you share a vision, when you share something that's so intimate, sometimes you have those misgivings, like, did I share something that maybe was just for me personally? And I said, God, I believe that you'll confirm that for me. I'm just asking you to confirm that I was supposed to declare this vision of a lioness arising openly. And that night I got a phone call. My husband called me. He said, Lisa, I need you to speak to this gentleman. It's a major, and he's going to be calling you. And he says he has something he needs to share with you directly. And so this major, who is over special ops for the Delta Force and the Rangers, he called me and he said, listen, I want to tell you something. We're not winning the war in the Afghanistan. And he said, we realized that if we are going to win the war, we have to involve the women to be the answer. And he said, we have created something called Team Lioness, and we are sending in women special ops in with the men special ops, and they're coming in and they're beginning to do medical health, supporting the women and telling the women in Afghanistan, you have the right to have a voice, you have value, you have worth. And he said, can I buy your book and give it to the team?
Wow.
So you know what? The earth and heaven are beginning to echo the value of women, that women are solutions hidden for this time.
Now, I don't think anyone who've heard you at one of our conferences or seen you on one of our couches know you as anything but this mighty woman of God. I'd like you to take us back to where God planted this vision, and who was Lisa Bevere then?
Okay, Lisa Bevere was a very timid, insecure, anxious, worried, frightened, hide behind my husband, busy with my children woman. And I'm not saying it's wrong to be busy with your children, because if you have children, you are going to be busy. I found myself pregnant with my 4th child. It just about pushed me over the edge. I was like, I cannot believe I'm pregnant again. I must just be for breeding purposes. This is incredible. I had a husband that traveled full time, and I went to bed a timid, afraid, young mother, overwhelmed, exhausted, and I woke up in the midst of this vision that confronted everything I was. I saw this magnificent backdrop. I saw this lioness laying on her side. She was on a platform of stone, and on the front of it was an inscription that said Numbers 23 in Roman numerals. And I heard this say, with the birth of your son, you will awaken a lioness. I began to shake. I'm like, I'm having another boy. Are you kidding?
You were expecting a girl?
I was hoping for a girl. Oh, lioness, are you joking? I'm afraid of everything. I'm the one that averts her eyes and, you know, National Geographic, run, zebra, run. I could never be a lioness. Are you kidding? I like dogs. I don't like confrontation. I'm afraid of everything I can't control. I didn't know what to do with that. But you know what? God will put an imagery in front of us that will awaken and stir something. God said, Lisa, you are so limited by what you've seen and what you've known, but I have something more than you've ever seen or something you've ever known. And I'm going to confront you with imagery you can't control. And I'm going to confront you with some imagery you can't become in your own strength. I tried really hard. I was like, okay, I'll be brave. I'll stop being so scared. And I tried to move into that. But you know what? 3 years ago, God said, I said, with the birth of your son, you would awaken a lioness, not that you were the lioness. He said, Jesus is the lion of the tribe of Judah, and it is time his bride awaken a lioness. A lioness is fearless. She has nothing to be afraid of. Who should she be afraid of? She is at the top of the food chain, and she rests in the shadow of the almighty lion who is the king of the jungle. But she is that queen that holds the land. In the animal kingdom, it is the lionesses that hold the territory, and the lions fight among each other, not the women. They fight among the other lions. Yes, the males fight with one another to enjoy the benefit that the lionesses give them. A lion would never dream about doing life without a lioness, because he understands the lioness brings him food and legacy. And so we've really got to understand that there is strengths that the women bring to the body of Christ that the men need to factor in. We were not meant to do just the men or just the women. We are meant to do life together. And so what God began to do was to speak to me and draw me out of that fearless place, you know, and say, come on, come on. I made you not to have limits. I made you to be fearless. Come on. Remember where you were come from. Remember who your God is. Begin to look at me and forget about yourselves. And I saw that begin to change my imagery and really begin to move outside of myself. You know, you will never, ever be free when you are contained by yourself, but none of us will never be content living small or living safe. We were made to live dangerous and large.
You begin one of the chapters of the book with a Margaret Mead quote. Every time we liberate a woman, we liberate a man.
Yes.
Was your husband in any way intimidated by the early roars? What
Actually,
is happening to my wife?
My husband created the early roars. My husband wanted me strong. My husband did not marry me so that I wouldn't give opinions and so that I would hide behind him. My husband would always push me out of my comfort zone and say, Lisa, there are young girls that need you to speak into their life. Lisa, you need to be free. Lisa, you need to be strong. And I'd be like, no, no, no. I remember one of the turning points for me, Mara, was I heard one of my sons echo my fears. And God began to say, you know why? He is dealing with the fears you have not faced off with. You know, I believe that our children will inherit one of two things, either God's promises or our fears. And if we
Our
don't...
modeling's very important.
Exactly. And if we don't deal with those things, then we leave them for our children to deal with it, and they get stronger every generation. And so I began to say, not for my sake, I'm gonna rise up for the sake of my children. John also would say, you don't have the right to be comfortable when so many people are uncomfortable. You don't have the right to remain captive when other people need you to be free. You know, only the truth stops the progression of a lie. And we need to be people that don't just speak the truth. We need to live the truth. The word needs to be made flesh in our life, that we get it, that we're for signs and wonders, that we are not for death and destruction. We are not for rules and regulations. God wants to do something beautiful and wonderful through his church, that we would be light. And light has an attractiveness to us, that it draws other people. You know, recently I was in the airport. I was coming back from South Africa, and there was people panicked on the plane, and they had to be removed.
Because?
And they, well, I don't know, fear. You know, people are so afraid right now. Yeah. People are terrified. And so they got on the plane, and then they decided they wanted to get off. And the way it is in South Africa, they had to, you know, get the buses out, offload the people, you know, bring back the stairs, and then they had to go through the baggage. And how much time was lost going through the baggage? I can't even explain it to you. They offloaded the baggage, and because of them going through their baggage, we almost didn't make that connection. And in Frankfurt, I remember getting in there and thinking, nobody's keeping me from getting home to my grandson. I haven't seen my grandbaby in a couple weeks. I need to get home. But there was this huge, long line, and it looked like there was no way. But you know what? Most people only see problems. They don't see answers. Everybody knew there was a problem. There wasn't enough things open. But I started to look for the answer. I found the one girl that actually looked like she knew what she was doing. I called her to me, and I said, you know what? I have a connection that I need to make, and I'm not thinking I'm going to make it. What can you do? What was I doing? I was telling her, you're an answer. Not you've created a problem. Not you've created a problem. You're an answer. And it was so funny because she came and she got me and she said, come with me. And this massive guy was standing behind me. He said, can I stay with you? Because it seems that you know where you're going. We need to be a people when everything is in chaos and there's problems, that we are the people that people say, I want to follow you because you seem to have the bearings of where you are going. And prophetic people see answers in the middle of problems.
You expected God to make a way as well. And as scary as some of this potential we're projecting may be for some watching today, if it's God who's calling you, he's going to see you to it and through it. An amazing example from your own life. I remember seeing you on TV in Thailand. And I thought, what is Lisa doing over there? This story started with reading a magazine article.
On my toilet, of all places, yes, because that's like one of the only places. There we go. Well, I mean, it's just, I think they might have maybe taken it out. But, you know, I want to say it because it's not about where you are physically. It's about your heart. I was flipping through a magazine, and all of a sudden I started reading about sex trafficking in Thailand. And I remember thinking, how is this happening? And I've been so consumed with my own life that I didn't know about it. And I began to cry. And I said, God, I tell you what, if I have any voice, if I have any strategy, if I have any money or any resource I can lend to being a solution to this, I'm your girl. And you know, I didn't just keep turning the pages and saying, oh, that's sad. I seized that moment. And 2 weeks later, I got a phone call from Life Today. And James and Betty, they said, Lisa, we have found out there is sex trafficking in Thailand, and we want to be part of the solution. And the only person we could think of to send was you. Will you go? And I said, absolutely. You know, when you seize a moment, when you say, God,
said, use me.
Yeah, then it's highlighted for the future. Absolutely. And it was just those small things. But you know what? Yes, you know, and everybody wants to go over and do something things, but there's things that need to be done near as well.
Well, you talk about prayer that roars.
Yeah. Absolutely.
What does that look like?
You know, Winston Churchill, he said, I was not the lion, but it fell to me to give the lion's roar. And I think that we need to say, what would God roar out against? Well, he would roar out against oppression and injustice and captivity and religious, you know, bondage. Jesus flipped the tables with the money changers, and he said, how dare you lay burdens on people when worshiping God is supposed to be a banquet of strength and not a yoke and a burden. And so we need to begin to roar out against the things that he would roar out against as well, and really give voice to those things. You know, it says that we're supposed to be the voice for those that have been oppressed. It says, speak up for those that have no voice. This is what women need to do. We need to speak up for the widow, the orphan, and the poor. But we also need to speak out. We need to understand we have the freedom freedom. We're not the women in the 1800s where we had no freedom. We have voice. And when you have voice, then you need to understand that even our timing, that God chose us for this moment is an entrustment. And that to whom much is given, much is required. We've had an entrustment of timing. We have the entrustment of influence. We have this entrustment of a voice that we can lift up against injustice. You and I live in North America. We have the ability to speak up. Let's speak up the things that God cares about, and let's really raise voice. But you know, I will say it comes even closer to home. My son, when he was 14, I was reading to him one night, and all of a sudden the content of the book was so horrific. My son looked at me and said, I don't want to read this anymore. It was pornography mixed with masturbation. And I remember my son going, Mom, our teacher's talking about this is normal, and you know, it's English, and I don't think we should talk about this. And I said, baby, I'm going to call the school tomorrow. You're not going to read this book anymore. So I called the teacher and I said, listen, this violates my son's conscience. He doesn't want to read this book. Can he have an alternative book? Yes, yes, he can. Can you handle this in a way that doesn't embarrass him? Yes, yes, I will. But she didn't. But you know what? No, that was a good thing, because it took that for me to realize that it wasn't just my son reading that book. There was 30 other boys in that class that were reading that book too. And I needed to be, but I hadn't been in that moment. And so when she didn't treat my son right, I said, you know what, you've just done this to the wrong person. And I went into the school,
hear me roar.
But I went into the school policies, and I found out that that book was actually in violation of the policies. And I came to the school and I said, you need to understand, according to your policies, this book shouldn't have been in here. And they actually thanked me for pointing out an error in how they selected their curriculum, and they removed the book. So it wasn't just my son that got protected, it was all the children. See, I can't...
You're keeping the radar up so you can be a change agent.
Exactly, and so many people try to hide everything. I did. I never even told them I was... No, I never even told them I was a Christian. I just went in there and said, you know, hey, I said, you know, to be honest with you, pornography is the entrance to sex trafficking. And I said, I know that you would never want to do anything but encourage virtue in these young men. And so this is where the end of this road is.
And how much is this the lioness who brings out the best, who calls the other lionesses and that lion to its highest and best?
Yes. You know, I love, Ezekiel said, I believe it's Ezekiel 19, it says, who was your mother? And it says she was a lioness among lions. And it talks about how she raised up the young lions to be mighty. We need to be women that do life so well, so graciously, so strategically, that we're invited into the world of others where they say, help us be solution to these problems. There is something about you that has strategy. There's something about you that's excellent. There's something about you that's virtuous and capable. And we need you to come into our world and bring some solution.
Wow, I wish we had more time. This is a book, as I said, I don't know when I've been this excited, page after page. I mean, just listen to this quote. We are designed for triumph, victory, signs, and wonders. How much of that are you enjoying? I think we have some growth potential here. And if I'm not stealing too much thunder, I think you give us the charge on the last page. It's a prose here. Rise like lions after slumber, in unvanquishable number. Shake your chains to earth like dew, which in sleep had fallen on you. Ye are many, they are few. Lioness, lift your voice. This is great fuel. And thank you. Thank you for going and growing with God and pouring it out to us. Lisa Bevere, always a treat.
Oh, it's always an honor.